Okay, welcome to the University of Washington Office of Admissions panel. My name is Aubrey Weaver, and I serve as the Assistant Director for Freshman Admission at UW. Today's panel will provide more information about the holistic review. We are also happy to answer any additional admissions-related questions that you may have. This panel will be recorded, so you can also access this information later. We'll begin the panel with an overview of the holistic review, and then we'll address your questions. You can enter your questions in the chat box, and we'll try to get through as many of those questions as possible this evening. This evening, I'm joined by three of my colleagues who will serve as our panelists, and I'll go ahead and turn it over to them to introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Paul Siegert, and I'm the Director of Admissions at the University of Washington.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jaime Soto, and I'm the Director for the Office of Multicultural Outreach and Recruitment.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jocelyn DeYoung, and I serve as the Senior Associate Director of Admissions, overseeing recruitment and communication. And I'm going to kick things off by doing just a really brief overview of holistic review. This panel this evening is about holistic review, but in particular how COVID-19 has impacted your schedules, your curricular, extracurricular activities, and we'll be addressing how holistic review can accommodate all of those changes. But to kick things off, I wanted to do an overview of what it really means, because it's a little different at each school. But at the University of Washington, we can kind of summarize into two main buckets. You've got your academic preparation and performance, and you've got your personal qualities and characteristics. So in our application, you're sharing the coursework that you've taken. So we're looking at the actual classes that you're taking. We're looking at the rigor of your curriculum. We look at the grades in those individual classes. We look at your senior year schedule. And remember, those of you rising seniors or about to be seniors here this fall, when you self-report your coursework, we're not going to necessarily see those classes or the grades that you've earned in the senior year. So the rigor of that schedule is really important and part of that holistic review process. We also in the state of Washington are required, all the public universities look at what we call the college academic distribution requirements. So these are core courses. They're probably very similar to your high school graduation requirements, but they can differ slightly. These are really minimum courses that we look to see that all applicants have taken. We look at the grades in those courses. So that really is what the academic preparation and performance entails. And you'll notice I didn't mention test scores, and Paul's going to dive into that a little bit more deeply because they're no longer required. The second bucket are those personal characteristics and qualities that you possess as an applicant, those non-cognitive variables, things that we wouldn't know based on just a GPA or a test score. And those are the things that you're going to tell us about in your activity journal, so your extracurricular activities, your essay responses, your cultural statement. And Jaime's going to go into a little more detail about how COVID-19 might be impacting some of those activities. So in a nutshell, that's holistic review, academic preparation and performance, and your personal qualities and characteristics. So you will on a GPA and a test score, and our process allows you to take those things into consideration. So with that, Paul, let's dive into how some of the changes that COVID-19 have brought to students and our future applicants and how we might be able to accommodate those.
Sure. Yeah, so we understand that your spring term has been totally different than you expected it to be, and different schools have handled the spring term in different ways, and different schools have adopted very different grading policies for the spring term. And so, you know, we've gotten a lot of questions around this, like how are we gonna understand, you know, what your school did versus what other schools did? How are we gonna assess your spring term? And one thing I will first say is that we understand that it was an unusual term for everybody, and so you know, we understand that every student in the state had to shift to doing online learning. We understand that it was different for everybody, and one thing that, as Jocelyn was talking about our holistic review, just talking about the elements that we consider. But one thing that's really helpful with our holistic review, and is going to be helpful in this world of COVID-19, is that it's not a formula. we're not putting GPAs and grade point averages into a machine that spits out a result. I mean, we have we have professional admissions officers that are really well trained, that are already used to seeing a variety of grading scales from schools across the state, across the country, and across the world. And they're going to be able to take a look at every case individually, and so we're going to be able to consider individual differences. Now, you can help us with this because it's possible for this first year that the schools are not going to be able to provide all of the information about how that they've changed policies. Eventually, they will. But we don't know right now if at the time that you're applying that's going to be easy for us to be able to have that information. So you can actually help us. So in our admissions process, Jocelyn was mentioning, you provide the information about what courses you're taking, and there's actually you'll hear a little bit more about this, but you're going to be able to actually let us know about things that were different in your school year. Due to COVID-19, and that's built into the application that you're going to be filling out. So actually, if you could tell us, we would appreciate it if you would tell us what your school is doing differently. That will help us. But we also will have our own resources. And I can also tell you that this is one term in your whole academic career, your spring term. And things may be different for the fall term. But if you're going into your senior year and you're applying next year, we wouldn't normally have grades anyway when we're reviewing what you did for your senior year. As Jocelyn mentioned, we're looking at the courses that you're taking for the senior year. We wouldn't know about the grades anyway. So we're really, for those who are applying next year, it's really only the spring term that we're talking about. So we will do the best job that we can in considering what your school is doing for different grading policies, but also we're going to be looking at all the work that you did in all the years and all the terms leading up to the spring term, and that's actually going to help us give a really good idea of all of the great preparation that you've done. All of the good coursework that you've done. We really, Jocelyn talked about that we really focus on curriculum, the curriculum that you're taking, the college prep curriculum that you're taking. That's really our focus, is what the courses that you're taking and how well you're doing in those courses. And really, for most of your high school career, we have those grades, and they're in a really consistent format. So we have really great staff that are gonna look at your applications individually, and we are really very confident that our holistic review is going to be able to manage all of those differences at all of those schools. So just help us out by giving us that information in case it's not easily accessible. And then we will do the rest. Okay, in terms of SAT or ACT, so you may have heard that due to the lack of testing sites, that we are not requiring the SAT or the ACT for the incoming class of 2021, not requiring them at all. It's still going to be possible to send us scores, and you can send us official scores. You could also, on the application, just send us unofficial scores. You can do that, but if you have not already taken the test, you do not need to take the SAT or the ACT for applying to the University of Washington. If we do not have scores from somebody, we absolutely are. That is not going to harm your application. We're absolutely committed to that. If you did already send scores, we are not going to let scores harm students in any way, shape, or form. We have not decided yet if we're going to consider high scores that students send in a small number of cases. If we do, it will be in a very, very limited capacity. And I can say, even in prior years, SAT and ACT scores rarely made a difference in a student in the outcome of a student's application. They rarely did anyway. And now we're going even further and not requiring scores, and we're committed to having test scores not hurt a student if you don't send them, not hurt you if you already send them and they're low scores and you're not able to retake this test and send higher scores. We're not going to let scores work against a student. We just haven't worked out yet whether we're going to, in some very limited capacity, look at scores. So we haven't figured out all of that. So really, I think the main message I want to give is if you haven't taken the SAT or the ACT, you do not need to take it to apply to the University of Washington. It is not going to hurt you to not take that test. We don't want anybody to go out of their way to put themselves in an unsafe situation, put themselves in any financial difficulty taking those tests. We just do not want SAT or ACT to be a barrier in any way to apply to the University of Washington or affect your chances at all. So I'll stop there and go on to, I believe Jaime is next.
Thank you, Paul. So at the University of Washington, we recognize that your extracurricular activities likely changed, and you'll have that opportunity to clarify it on your UW application. We understand that every student has been affected by COVID-19, and we'll make sure to pay attention to everything you've done until the end of this school year. We won't be expecting for anyone to keep up with the same level of activities as you have in the past. At the end of June, the coalition profile will be updated to include a question about how COVID-19 impacted you. Use this opportunity to tell us more. This will help us with context on how COVID-19 closures impacted activities that you would have been participating in. And the question that's going to be on the coalition profile reads as follows. Natural disasters and emergency situations like the COVID-19 pandemic have impacted the lives of many students and their families. While entirely optional, you may share information here regarding how any of these events have affected you or your family circumstances. From there, you're going to be able to check off all that apply for you. For example, if you've had inconsistent or unreliable access to home internet, a computer, a laptop, or a tablet, if you lost a job and were no longer able to work, at least one of your parents, guardians, or caretaker was considered an essential worker, for example, a healthcare worker, a grocery employee, a public transportation driver, first responder, sanitation worker, and was required to work. Also, if your home responsibilities increased or changed, we want to make sure that you're including that in your activities on the coalition profile of your application. Also, within the coalition profile, there's going to be an additional information text box that you're going to be able to include additional information. And you're going to have up to 300 words maximum to include any additional information. Again, use this space to tell us more. For example, were you planning to be in sports for spring quarter or for your spring semester and the sporting got canceled? Were you planning to be team captain? Did your DECA competition get canceled? Or were you going to be part of or participate in the UW-sponsored program, but that changed? We want to make sure that you have the maximum opportunity to make sure how COVID-19 has impacted your activities on your University of Washington application. And with that, I will turn it on over to Aubrey.
Can I jump in really quick? You prompted something that I know we didn't address, and I know we're doing a deep dive of COVID and holistic review, but just to clarify, the coalition application is our application platform. It's a shared platform, and the profile, which makes up about 80% of that application, is always open. So for those who are interested in applying for fall of 2021 or 2022, you can start building out that profile right now. So if I jump in and clarify that.
Great, thank you, Jocelyn. And we have had several questions asked this evening, so we're going to jump into some of the questions that were asked tonight. So panelists, I hope you're ready. We'll start with Jocelyn. Jocelyn, we have a question about UW's minimum requirements, so our CATER requirements. How do those compare to A through G requirements that students may see in the state of California?
Oh, hardball right away. I have Aubrey and those watching, there's a lot of you. I'm not as familiar with the A through G requirements, but I suspect that they are very similar. I mean, they're probably closely tied to what we would consider just common or core class requirements. So for the state of Washington caters, you've got 4 years of English, you've got 3 years of math, you've got 3 years starting with the class of 2021 of science, 2 of which are lab science. You've got an art credit. You've got the full list on our website, and we can, in a follow-up, send that link to you all directly to get the full list. But I'm not entirely sure. I apologize. I don't know off the top of my head what the A through G requirements look like, but I suspect they're very similar.
And I think that's helpful just for students to know the types of courses that we're looking for too. But like Jocelyn said, those are explained in detail on our website. So we'll provide that link. The next question is for Paul. Paul, we've received several questions, and I know you talked a little bit about the differences in the grading scales that we've seen, but we've received several questions about the grading scale changes. Specifically, some schools have moved to an A or incomplete grading scale. Others have moved to credit, no credit, or pass or fail. And then others have kept the traditional letter grading scale. Can you talk to us a little bit more about how the holistic review can accommodate the variety of grading scales? And then again, just help students understand really how we're able to really full context of those grading scales.
Sure, and I'll start by repeating again that our focus first and foremost is on the courses that students are taking. How rigorous is the curriculum? How well are you preparing yourself for college based on the courses that you're taking? We are, of course, interested in how well a student is doing in those courses, and that's what grades do. So we I noticed I haven't mentioned GPA. So I think that the greatest effect of grading scale changes is on how they impact the GPA. Well, GPA is not our focus. The GPA is just a collection of individual courses and individual grades. And because we're not focused on the overall GPA, we're focused on the courses and the individual performance in those courses. I think that those differences are that allows us to be able to look student by student. And I must say for that term, we are not going to be focusing as much on the grades for that spring term, because it was a rough term for everybody, and we're really going to be focused more on did you continue to take those courses, and did you complete those courses? We are just simply not going to be as focused on the grades. We are going to look more at the previous years, because again, you have many terms of grades, and we're going to kind of look at the record that you had leading up to that, and for the spring term, we're really going to be focused just more on the courses that you took and completed.
I'm really glad you said that, Paul, because I think one of the trending questions that we're getting in the office is this notion that I, as a Seattle resident and Seattle Public School student, am going to be, if I get a 4.0 because it's A or incomplete, am I going to be compared against a student who has a full range of grading scale, or pass, no pass? And that's just simply not the case. So we have a lot of questions. I just took a peek in there. There's a lot.
Yes, if it looks like I am reading, that's because I am. I'm trying to sort through those questions. Jaime, I'm going to kick the next question to you. We have several questions about Running Start. And for those of you joining us this evening that are not Washington State residents, Running Start is a program here for Washington high school students to earn college credit while they are in high school through one of our local community colleges. So Jaime, can you talk to us a little bit, as a Running Start student, how should the student apply to the University of Washington, and how do we review Running Start courses in regard to the rigor of the curriculum?
Absolutely, that's a really good question. So at the University of Washington, we view a Running Start student applicant as a freshman applicant. You would not be considered a transfer student. The reason being why you're going to be applying to the first-time freshman students because you have not yet received your high school diploma at the time of applying to the University of Washington. There's just a couple caveats with that, though. As a Running Start student, you are able to take that additional summer courses at the local community college if you're going to complete your AA. However, though, if you're going to go to the community college beyond the summer right after your high school graduation, at that point, you would be considered a transfer student. At the University of Washington, we consider Running Start courses as college prep courses, which align with AP classes, IB classes, college and the high school, and honor classes as well.
I'm glad you mentioned that because that was something I was supposed to say when I was talking about course review, in that we don't value AP over IB over dual enrollment or Running Start courses. They're all really viewed as college or you demonstrating rigor if that's available to you. So that is definitely a part of that academic preparation kind of bucket, if you will.
Great. We're going to switch gears slightly. We've had several questions about direct admission to majors. So Jocelyn, I'll kick the question to you. Can you talk to us a little bit more about how students can indicate their intended major at the University of Washington and how they can really maximize the major opportunities that they can explore at UW?
Absolutely. So we have over 180 majors, and on the admission application, we ask you to list your first choice and second choice if you have one major. So by doing that, you will automatically be considered for any of the programs that accept students directly as freshmen. So the most important areas we consider direct admission will be the College of Engineering. So they admit students directly to the college. So if you list any of the 10, there's technically 11 programs in the College of Engineering, but if you list any of the 10, with the exception of computer engineering, you'll be considered for direct entry to not only the University of Washington, but also to the College of Engineering. We've also got Allen School admission, which is our computer science and engineering school, which includes majors of computer science and computer engineering. And if you list either of those two programs as your first choice, you will automatically be considered for admission to either of those two programs, which are both awarded through the Allen School. We also have the Foster School of Business. So if you list business as your first choice, you'll be considered directly for business. And really the most important takeaway out of listing your first choice is that you just simply do that. If it's your first choice, list it. And if you're open to studying something else besides what you listed as your first choice, list that as a second choice. If you're not, you don't have to answer that second choice. And by doing those things, listing your first choice major, you'll automatically be considered for admission. I will say, though, with some of those programs that are highly capacity constrained, like computer science, computer engineering, and other engineering programs, if you truly are open to studying a second, another major, please list that. That's really important for us because major may be used as an admission factor when we're going to select the class.
Great. Thank you, Jocelyn. Speaking of selection, Paul, we've had several questions this evening about the percentages or the ratio of in-state students as opposed to out-of-state students or international students that we admit each year. So can you talk to us a little bit more about selection and our priorities when admitting students to the university?
Sure. Well, we value students from all over the state of Washington, all over the country, all over the world. I mean, one of the reasons the University of Washington is such a great place to study is because just we have amazing students from all over, and we have a diverse student body in terms of where students come from, and in terms of the backgrounds of students themselves. When we're selecting the class, however, we do numerically we do reserve more space for Washington residents, so significantly more space. So about 2/3 of our class is made up each year of Washington residents. So when students apply, when Washington residents apply, they are reviewed in a pool of Washington residents, and we have a certain number of spaces for Washington residents, and we try to enroll about 4,450 Washington residents, and only Washington residents are considered for those spaces, and then for the non-residents from from other states and territories, and for international students, we seek to enroll about 2,550. So 4,450 versus about 2,550. Still a significant amount, but not as many. And those students are and those students are considered are only those students are considered for those spaces. So the result is that it's a little more competitive for students from out of the state of Washington and international students than for Washington residents, just because we have so many more spaces for Washington residents. So I'll put a number on that. The percentage of Washington residents that we're able to admit is tends to be about 60%. This year, actually, it was a little more. It was about 62% of Washington residents who applied were offered admission, and for non-residents and international students, it's closer to about 50%. Of those who apply are offered admission. So more competitive for out-of-state students, but we but at an admit rate of around 50%, we're still admitting a lot of students from out of state too. And we love all our students, and once they're here, they're Huskies, and it just makes for just a fantastic student body, and we hope that you're part of that group next year.
Great, thank you, Paul. Jaime, we've had several questions this evening after Jocelyn had mentioned that the coalition profile is always open. We've had students asking, when can I see the UW questions? So can you talk to us a little bit more about how students can see those questions now and when those questions will be available in the coalition application itself?
Absolutely. So to answer your first question of when students can see the University of Washington personal statement questions, those actually live on the UW admissions website all the time. You can actually get a head start right now on your personal statements by going into our admissions website and being able to see what questions we're going to ask when the UW application within the coalition opens up for the University of Washington. Now, when can you access the UW portion of the application within the coalition? That application for you is going to open up on September 1, and the deadline to apply to the University of Washington through the coalition is November 15th. November 15th is not an early deadline. It is not a priority deadline. That is a hard deadline and the only deadline that we have at the University of Washington.
Great, thank you, Jaime. Jocelyn, kind of continuing on that same vein, we've had some questions from students in regard to AP test scores. Do we consider AP test scores through the holistic review? Do we consider letters of recommendation? So can you talk to us about the required elements of the application? I guess more so, what do we not consider during the holistic review?
Yes, so let's start with the AP. We would see in your self-reporting of your academic transcript that you've taken an AP course. If you have, we don't see those scores. So even if you sent us those scores previously, say you just took the exam and you had the University of Washington as a recipient, our readers would not see those scores. So that's not a factor. The factor is the fact that you took the course and you did. So that's your that's how you're demonstrating rigor if you're able to do so. In terms of letters of recommendation, we don't require those, and we don't read them if you send them. So we ask kindly that you save those schools that do want letters of recommendation. So you also don't need to send us your transcript at the time that you're applying. Again, you're self-reporting all the coursework that you've taken in the coalition profile under the high school coursework section, which is again something you can be working on right now. But transcripts are not required until you're admitted and you decide to enroll. Then we're going to ask you for a final transcript. In which case we'll verify that what you said you took, you did, and how you performed. And you all are very honest, so we're not.
Great, thank you. And Paul, we've had some questions this evening from students who are curious how the autumn 2020 class may impact our admission for autumn 2021 students. So the question is, did we see more students deferring their admission for next year? So I think that may be helpful for students to have a little bit more insight into our policy on deferrals so they understand how that will or won't impact their application for autumn 2021.
Okay. Actually, I'm going to enjoy answering this question on deferrals for this audience, because for this audience, I think you will be happy to know that that we do not allow students to defer their admission. So we certainly had students wanting to do that this year to delay entry into college, but we do not allow students to defer. And one of the reasons that we stuck to that policy was because we just didn't think that would be fair for students who are going to be applying for the incoming class of 2021 because if we deferred students, then that would be that many fewer spaces for you to apply for, which would have made it more competitive. And we just didn't think that was fair to you. So the number of students that we admitted and that will be enrolling is about the same number as in previous years, which means we are going to, we expect to be able to offer the admission and enroll about the same number of students for the incoming class of 2021. So it should not affect your chances at all.
Thanks, Paul. I thought you might enjoy providing some good news for our rising seniors. Jaime, the next question is for you. How do you recommend students discuss or share any barriers that they may have encountered or overcome that may have caused a decrease in their GPA or their performance throughout high school?
That's an important question. The way that you kind of let us into your life, let us into your obstacles, your hardship, your adversity is through your personal statements on the UW application. And you're going to have a ton of opportunity to really let us into your personal life with those personal statements. The University of Washington requires you to submit 2 personal statements. The first one is 500 words or less. And then the second one, which is a short response, is about cultural awareness. That one's 300 words or less. In addition to those 2 personal statements, there's also 2 additional text boxes that you can submit additional information that was not yet made aware anywhere in your application. So let's say, for example, you had a decrease in your grades your freshman year, your sophomore year, or junior year. That's a great place for you to let us into that part of your life, to let us know, hey, my GPA or my grades went down because of this personal factor that was going on at home in my personal life. We want to make sure that we really get to review your holistic self versus just looking at numbers. So the personal statements on the UW application and those additional text boxes is a great opportunity for you to let us into your life. And again, talk to us about challenges, obstacles, adversity, and anything else that it's important that we should know about you.
Great, thank you. And Jocelyn, the next question's for you. We talked earlier about running START for the state of Washington. So we've had some other students asking, what if I'm from another state and I've taken concurrent or dual enrollment? How is that reviewed during the holistic review? And will those classes transfer to the University of Washington?
Yes, so I'm sorry, I wasn't clear enough. Absolutely, any dual enrollment, concurrent enrollment programs, whether it's Running Start or a program by another name, demonstrate to us rigor when we're looking at your self-reported academic work. And for lack of a better way of saying it, it looks good. I mean, you're challenging yourself if that's available to you. And ultimately, that's what we're interested in seeing when we're reading applications. And yes, assuming that the institution that you're taking the college coursework from or getting the credit from is regionally accredited, it's not remedial coursework, so typically a 100 level or higher, that can all be submitted for transfer credit evaluation to our office. So, and that's not done though, however, until after admission decisions go out and you let us know that you're planning to come. But generally speaking, as long as it's academic coursework, it's not remedial, so 100 level or higher typically is transferable to the institution.
Great, thank you. Paul, we have students asking, can I apply to the University of Washington as undeclared or undecided? How do I indicate that on my admissions application?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of students do not know what they want to major in, and you absolutely can do that So we give you that opportunity. And also, you know, you could also, it doesn't hurt to, it doesn't hurt to, if you have a leaning towards a particular major, to go ahead and indicate that major. However, if you really truly are undecided, that is absolutely fine. You can indicate undecided. And also, I'll let you know, there is the option, you know, to remind everybody for first and second choice major. So so there's an opportunity to indicate too.
Thank you. The next question I'm going to kick to Jaime. We have a question about how can students prepare for the application process at UW? What are some of the things that you would recommend that they do now before they start their senior year to help that application process be smoother?
Absolutely. So as I mentioned a little before, the personal statement prompts for the UW are already on our website. So you can definitely get a head start through your personal statements by going onto our website and getting those prompts and start writing them over the summer. The next step you should be doing to get a head start is starting to build your coalition profile. As Jocelyn mentioned, that profile is already open for you. You're able to access your profile. You'll be able to start inputting your contact information, your high school information, self-reporting your classes, your grades, your activities that you're going to be able that you can start doing now. And as a reminder, the UW portion of the coalition opens September 1. So between now and September 1, you have all this time to already fulfill the coalition profile, which is about 75% of your UW application. So before the UW application actually opens up, you would have already completed the majority of your application through the coalition profile. So two things that I would recommend you start doing now to prepare yourself. The first one is you can start writing your personal statements. Those prompts are already on our website. And two, you should already start writing your or building your coalition profile now.
Don't wait till the last minute, like 85% of the applicants typically do. It's a long application. So yeah, do what you can now.
Great. Jocelyn, I know we've been focusing a lot on autumn 2021 applicants this evening, but we have a question about students that may be in their freshman or sophomore year. The question is, for all of the accommodations that you are making for juniors in terms of GPA grades for this spring, will you continue to recognize the hardships for this semester for freshmen and sophomores when it's their turn to apply in 2 or 3 years?
Yes, that's a great question. I think I can speak for, I don't know, is it too big to say the whole world that we will not forget spring 2020? I mean, so we've talked a lot about this. I mean, this has been such a, moment in history. Our readers, our staff, we're well trained. We will not forget. And as the years go by, that term, potentially even summer term, if students decide to take up opportunities to pursue summer coursework, and we don't know what the fall is going to look like either. But all that to say, we will remember that noted either on your transcript or there will be opportunities on the coalition application to disclose how that impacted you during that transition to high school, or whether it's your sophomore year. Rest assured, we will not forget.
Yes, I think you are right in speaking for the vast majority of the world. We will not soon forget spring 2020. Paul, the next question is for you. I know we've talked a lot about ACT and SAT scores this evening, but we have a question in regard to international students. Will international applicants still be required to submit a TOEFL or IELTS test score?
Yes. Yes. The decision to not require the standardized test scores of SAT and ACT is a different matter than the IELTS or TOEFL, because IELTS and TOEFL are English proficiency exams. So international students that are required to submit English proficiency exams if they are coming from a non-English speaking country, and that requirement still remains. And those requirements, I mean, those actually tie into visa requirements. So I mean, those are required, for a student going to any university to demonstrate the English proficiency. However, we have done something to make it a little bit easier, and we've added, we're going to accept Duolingo as an additional test, and we haven't determined yet what the score would that we're going to require as a minimum score. And once we know that, we'll post that to our website. But by allowing Duolingo, that just I mean, that's another option for students to take in, and students can do that remotely.
Great, thank you. Jocelyn, if students and their families want to continue to engage with the University of Washington, what are some of the resources that they have available to them, especially considering at this time we're not offering campus tours in person on our campus?
Oh, there's so many resources. I'm glad this person asked. We've put together a whole web page full of video tours. So if you go to admit.uw.edu/visit, you can navigate to our video tours. That's one opportunity. We have counselors, admissions counselors assigned to you based on if you're in Washington, we've got you assigned by high school. Out of Washington or out of country, we've got you assigned by state or international contact. So reach out to your admissions counselor. We're doing Zoom appointments. We're doing phone appointments. We're here to help. We are also doing daily information sessions, so you can watch that in the same platform that you're watching us right now. We have info sessions. We also have some academic departments that do some info sessions. Again, this same platform, you can navigate through some of those subpages to see what other content is available. So many ways to stay connected. I will say, though, demonstrated interest is not a factor in our holistic review process, just to be clear, but we are here to serve, and we're here to answer questions, and happy to do so.
Great. Jaime, we have a student life related question. The question is about housing. Are incoming freshmen required to live on campus at the University of Washington?
That's a good question. So at the University of Washington, freshmen are not required to live on campus. However, the majority of our first-year freshmen do live on campus. So you have the decision if you'd like to live on campus, off campus, or if you're kind of from the surrounding community, to continue to live at home.
Great. We've had a lot of questions about timeline for senior year. I know earlier Jaime shared that we do not participate in early action or early decision. Jocelyn, can you share our timeline for those students that will be applying for autumn 2021 admission and what that timeline will look like for their senior year?
Sure, and I know people are joining and leaving, so I'm just going to recap. So the coalition profile is always open. So the only way to apply to the University of Washington is through the Coalition for College. So you can be working on that profile at all time. The UW's questions of the application open September 1st, and they will remain open until November 15th. So you have that amount of time to finish that remaining 20% of the application. So as soon as those applications, the deadline comes, it closes, we frantically start training our readers and start and there's a lot of applications. We read them all. And so it takes time. And so it's a little bit of a wait. We do notify you March 1st through the 15th of your admission decision. So, and then you have until May 1 to accept decline the offer. That's line in it.
Great. And Paul, I'll direct the next question to you. We've had a couple questions this evening from students and parents asking how we admit students in regard to if they're coming from the same high school or if they're coming from the same area out of state. So do we have capacity on the number of students we can admit from a specific high school or a specific region out of state?
Sure. Yeah, the simple answer to that is no. There's no limit to the number of students we can admit from any particular school. So so once a student applies, they're in the pool, with all the other students. As I said, there is a distinction that Washington residents are being considered for the Washington resident spaces, non-residents for the non-resident spaces. But other than those categories, other than Washington resident, non-resident, and international student category, there's no distinction there.
Great, thank you. Jaime, can you tell us more if a student was involved in a UW-sponsored or UW-related activity? How can they tell us about that within their application? What space would be most appropriate for that?
Yeah, so if any of you were participating in a UW-sponsored event, and this is across the University of Washington, so through our office, Multicultural Recruitment, we host tons of programming. We know the Foster School of Business hosts Young Executives of Color, College of Engineering hosts the Math Academy, the Nursing School hosts their nursing camp. So if you participated in any UW-sponsored program, the good spot for you to include that in is under your activities. So in your activities, we would like for you to include any UW-sponsored events that you participated in.
Great, and we're getting a lot of questions about if this panel will be recorded. So just want to reiterate, yes, this panel is recorded, so you can access it through this platform at a later time so you can continue to watch and get all of your questions answered. Let me take another look here at our question pool. Okay, Paul, we have some questions in regard to major. So if a student is not offered direct admission to one of the programs that offer direct admission, can they still be admitted to the University of Washington? What does that process look like for those students if they are not offered direct admission to some of those more capacity constrained programs?
Yes, and this is where it's important for students when they're selecting their first choice major, they also select a second major. If they are, if you're applying to a capacity constrained major, and we tell you that in the application, we let you know if that major that you're selecting is capacity constrained. And if it is, and if it is a major where that is the primary pathway into that major, we ask you on the application, we ask you if we are not able to admit you into that major, would you still be interested in attending the University of Washington? And if your answer is yes, then all you need to do is choose another major option. And if you do that, then then we know that that you still would be interested in studying at the University of Washington. So as long as you do that, as long as you select another major, then we will still consider you for admission.
Now, I want to clarify one thing too. If you're admitted to the university, you are not required to study what you put on your application or what we assign you into. So if your admission is not conditional based on that. So if you're truly undecided, that's fine. Or if you change your mind, that's fine. That's very common, in fact. So I just want to clarify that. That is often a question that we receive as well.
Great. And then Jocelyn, one more time, I know we've discussed it, but will you talk one more time about the elements that are required, the pieces of the application that we review as far as, do we review AP test scores, letters of recommendation? We've had some folks joining, so we have some more questions about test or the requirements for the application.
Sure. So we're a little unique in that when you apply to the University of Washington, you don't send us your transcript. You're going to self-report all of your academic coursework in that coalition profile. And that's why we keep talking about, and for those of you who are joining us just now, the importance of starting that application early, and that profile section is always open because you're going to go in, you're going to say what high school you attend, what the course name is, and then the grade or marks for them, depending on what the grading scale is. So no transcripts. No test scores unless you've already sent them to us or you have them and you want to send them. That's fine. That won't disadvantage you. You're welcome to send them, but it's not a requirement. No letters of recommendation. We would rather hear from you how you're prepared to contribute to our campus community rather than from a friend of a family or teacher or whatnot. Letters of recommendation. And then AP scores, if you've sent them to us, that's great. They sit there in your file, but when we're reading applications, we don't see those scores, and they're not a factor. The only factor that will be used in that holistic review process is the fact that you took an AP class or an IB class, if that was the case. And we also know some of you take the exams and never sit through the class. So, but if you do have the class, you'll self-report that on the academic transcript. Did I cover all the salient points?
Yes, I'm trying to kind of do a catch-all with some of the similar questions that we're receiving this evening. Jaime, if a student or family was interested in connecting with their specific admissions counselor to schedule an appointment or talk through the application process, as Jocelyn mentioned earlier, how can families find and how can students find their admissions counselor's contact information?
That's an important question, because how do you get connected to us? How do you get connected to a team member to help you through this process? If you log into the University of Washington admissions website, if you click under the Contact Us page, there's this really cool tool that says Find Your Admissions Counselor. So this tool, the first question is going to ask you pretty much where you're from. So you can indicate your state, where you live. After you indicate a state, then you're going to click on search, and then your admissions counselor will appear. However, if you're a Washington State student, it's going to also ask you for your high school. After you input your high school, then on there you can also be able to click search, and your admissions counselor will appear. You're going to have access to your admissions counselor's phone number and email. And during this time that everybody is telecommuting, everybody's still available over phone and email. And we are looking forward to connecting with you over, if it's a Zoom, the phone, email, whatever that may be, to get you started on your UW application and admissions process this fall.
Great, thank you, Jaime. And I'm so glad you mentioned that we are still available, even though we may not be on campus currently. So thank you for sharing how students can connect with us. I think the final question I would like all of our panelists to answer this evening is, what advice do you have for juniors or maybe even sophomores that are starting their college search process? Do you have any tips of the trade as admissions experts? What would you recommend for students that are starting that college search process?
I'll start. So I'm a big proponent of our platform, the Coalition. So through the Coalition, you can be searching for colleges. Right now, there's a search function that not a really dynamic tool, but it's a place to start where you can find Coalition members and then all other four-year public and private universities around the U.S. So many of us right now are really eager to connect with you. We're sitting at home, maybe in a hallway like I am, trying to find some good lighting. And so reach out, we're here to help. Summer is usually a time when we would have otherwise had a lot of campus visitors, campus tours. So utilize the resources online, but reach out and make a connection with your admissions counselor or advisor. We're really here to help.
I'll say that I think it's a great opportunity to think about a world where we are hopefully past all of this COVID-19 stuff, and I'd urge you to try to not let the challenges of completing school, of finding these new ways to get information about colleges. Try to not let that get in the way of your search process and change the kind of colleges that you're thinking about going to. That in the end, I think everything that was true prior to COVID-19 is going to be true during and is going to be true after. You want to find a university that's going to be a great fit for you. In terms of even if somebody needs to start classes online, but that probably won't be true for people that are applying, past 2021. Even if some of the classes, even if there's a hybrid model and some of the classes are online, Each university is still unique, and they still have a uniquely different faculty members. They still have uniquely different student bodies, uniquely different offerings. And I'd say just continue to pursue what your dreams were, and I think the only thing that's different is that in the meantime you're going to have slightly different ways to get information. And those of you who are listening to us right now, congratulations, because you are taking advantage of a new way to gain information, and you've got a really good head start. And I commend you.
For myself, I have two. One that has to do more with the UW application itself is when it comes to the personal statements. We know that oftentimes our personal statements in general can be a little intimidating for our students to write. And my recommendation, kind of my advice for you all is be your best authentic self, be yourself. That's what's going to really let us into who you are, your personal life. Talk to us again, how I said earlier, about your challenges, your obstacles, your adversity. We want to get to know you on the personal level. So don't be afraid to let us into your personal life with our personal statements. That's one. And then the second one is, we're here to support you. We want to be part of this journey with you to become a Husky at the University of Washington. The staff is here. They're waiting for you. We're waiting for you. We're excited for you. And how I said, we're still available to connect with you and your families. If you want to do a one-on-one meeting with your admissions counselor, we're still here for you. So don't feel like you need to go through this journey by yourself. We're rooting for you, and we hopefully look forward to welcoming you to the University of Washington in autumn 2021.
Great. Thank you each for your advice. One housekeeping note, we do have a COVID-19 admissions FAQ on our website, and we will continuously update that page as we have more information. So that's a really good hub and a really good resource for you as you're thinking about applying to the University of Washington in light of COVID-19. So a lot of information on our website. Encourage you to check that out. But thank you for joining us this evening. We have enjoyed answering your questions and connecting with you. As a reminder, this session will be recorded so you can watch it again. And we will continue this panel series through the remaining months of the summer. So check back with us for more topics that will be covered by other panels as well. This platform is a great way to connect with UW, like Jocelyn mentioned earlier. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to contact our office. Feel free to contact your admissions counselor. We are here to help. We're here to make this process as easy as we possibly can. So thank you again for joining us this evening. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Thanks. That was fun.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.